Well, welcome and good day, everybody. We, of course, are glad you guys are joining us again for another Talk It Over. Continuing, of course, in our series At the Movies, which has so far been excellent. Had a lot of, good information, good messages, a lot of things pulled out of those movies, which has been really, really good.
Yep.
So before we dive into that this week, I've got Dave with me again this week. Of course, my name is Ian. And so, Dave, how's your week been? The last couple weeks been? Things been going all right?
It has been. It's been kind of into a pattern. We're into summer routines and kind of enjoying the warm weather. And yeah, so nothing too remarkable.
Nothing too remarkable.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been it's been a pretty good week. A little more stress. Boss was away, so I was in charge. So
Okay.
dealing with a bit more of the phone call stuff, which I don't do as much of
Yeah.
as when he's around. So just dealing with a bit more of that this week, which led to a little bit longer days at work. Just just getting everything kind of tied up and
Yep.
and put together. But that's that's all part of it. We all need vacation. We all need time away. So
Yeah.
we all just kind of pitch in to make it all happen. So yeah, it came together pretty good. We all worked together, got everything done. So that was good. And yeah, the weather's been pretty good. The first couple days were kind of hot, and then we got a bit of rain, which was nice, cooled it off, cooled the humidity out anyway, which was helpful. So
Yeah.
really enjoyed that, which has been really, really good. So let us know, guys, in the chat, how your week been? Maybe you had something good, something really exciting happen, or maybe something maybe a little more difficult. But of course, we would love to hear from you guys. So please let us know in the comments. Today, kind of talking about perseverance.
Yes.
Today, and the struggles and suffering and things that we
Yeah.
tend to go through. Maybe not on a regular basis, but we do come across them
It
frequently
happens.
enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, excellent message. Our scripture today is in James 1, verse 12. Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him.
Mm.
Which I think we can all really relate to.
Yeah.
That we've all had to persevere through difficult times, hard things that have really tested our character. And who we are and what we stand in and stand for. And I really do like that verse. It really just kind of emphasizes that God promises us things, but we need to persevere through some of those difficult things to get to that.
Yeah.
Our first question, what's something you're grateful for this week, Dave? Something that maybe thankful for, grateful for?
We talk about this regularly as a family at the dinner table.
Okay, yep.
And realize that being grateful is such an important part of life. And so how do we build that in?
Mm-hmm.
And so we talk about it. It's always interesting, right? Because there's the basic stuff of very thankful for my family.
Yep.
And then there's the things like we're thankful for the things we've been blessed with, like a beautiful home. And then you can get to like, the garden or, good friend conversation.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I guess it's any and all of those that just have been really a blessing. So really grateful for those.
Yeah, those grateful things I think we can kind of skip over sometimes where we tend to forget. So not discussing them or not bringing them up, I think we tend to just they just fade.
Yeah. We take them for granted, don't we?
Yeah. You kind of take those grateful good things for granted and they just kind of disappear and you don't think about them. And if you don't talk about them, they never really come back up.
Yeah. And
then it's kind of hard to remember sometimes what was I grateful for? There's things, but it's hard to sometimes remember those specific pieces.
Yeah.
This week, I'm really grateful for family physician, not the one we normally see. Somebody who is part of the group of physicians.
Yeah.
Ours was away on holiday, so Emmett needed to see a family doctor, and the doctor he saw has never really seen Emmett, so doesn't know his case kind of from front to back of everything. But very grateful for how thorough he was, just in looking, through Emmett's chart, really going through kind of all the steps of what, we could be facing or what's the issue, which was excellent. I know we've seen other physicians at the hospital that don't know his case and are a little bit afraid to kind of where to start.
Yeah.
So just to see that thoroughness was really good, just to kind of get us on the right direction. And what he was describing and explaining to us and kind of what we would need to do to try to make things move forward for Emmett all made sense. And we've started that and it's seeming to make a difference for him now. His pain has come down, which is good, and things seem to be moving in the right direction. So just very thankful for that. And I think, again, one of those things sometimes we forget when we, again, take it for granted when you have, not necessarily just doctors, but, other people that know you really well. And it's easy to forget how important it is to have people asking the right questions and having those good conversations when we tend to just have those normally, and we just kind of forget how grateful we are to have those people around us. So,
that's good. I'm sure it's reassuring too.
It is
making that effort.
It is. Because that's the last thing you want is somebody who's just kind of like, it sounds like this here, like, and not really be thorough. So in that situation, excellent to have that, and very, very thankful and grateful for that. So in the message today, Dave, was there a part of it that was really impactful for you, something that stood out?
I think there was a few. So this is a movie in our At the Movie series, Father Stew.
Yes.
And it's not a movie I've seen, but obviously for our At the Movies series, they show you quite a bit of the movie, so you get a real feel for it. And it was quite powerful. And watching this guy's life change so dramatically, and all the suffering and hardship that came through that, I think was pretty impactful. I think getting to the end of the movie and seeing a guy who had lost so much physically, and had so much hardship going on, and yet his attitude was still one of, how is God going to use this? What's good's going to come out of it? And being grateful, even in the middle of like really terrible circumstances, I thought was pretty significant. And you always wonder, right? If that's me and things get that bad as a believer, what will my attitude be? What will I be like when I get there? If that's what God wants me to do. And boy, the grace and the faith that this guy held on to was huge.
It was. It was a very powerful movie. Again, not one I've seen either. And seeing kind of that journey in the clips throughout the message really struck me as a place of where I came from. It's all about me and kind of my wants, my direction, and then seeing that change from, this is God, this is who he is, and kind of unsure, and then continuing to learn more and seeing him, step into areas of my life and changing kind of my heart and how I view God and that relationship and the people around me. And it was just, it was a really strong movie. It just really hit the heartstrings for me. And again, seeing that the suffering part and understanding, crying out and seeing, why is this happening? What's going on? Why does it need to be me? It just really brought back memories for me, and just really was really good. And the message that Craig brought out of it, just in what we need to look at really strongly from the God perspective of, the trials, the tribulations, things that we need to experience, but that perseverance to push through gets us to a point where God can continue to use us in a very vast different way than what we would expect to be used, maybe. Just really, really powerful. And
because that's what becomes relatable, doesn't it? The fact that when you see someone going through something so hard, we identify with those hardships from our own life.
And being based off the true story of Stuart's life. Again, I find those movies more moving, I guess. With the actual events and the proper life story. I find those just much more touching because they tend to really bring out more personal emotion.
They do.
And the story generally is really well done because of it's being told from that perspective.
And it's amazing, right? Because those stories of coming through hardship and how we deal with it and what that looks like coming out the other side, those are the ones that we find really meaningful. And that's actually what the Bible is full of. Right? It's not a bunch of like, oh, this was so lovely for them and they drifted through life. Like, those are not the stories.
No.
Instead, the stories are just like with Father Stu, like, wow, so much hardship, and we identify with it. And what did they do with that? And where was God in the mix? And it makes it so powerful.
It does. Makes it extremely powerful. So continuing on this idea of suffering, what does suffering mean to you? And how do you typically handle suffering?
It's funny because I was thinking about how subjective that word is, suffering.
Yes, it is.
And that for somebody else, they would look at it and go, wow, you're really suffering. And for yourself, you might think, oh, I didn't realize, I didn't know,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't
yep,
realize I was
yep,
suffering.
yep,
Thanks for letting me know. Or the vice versa. Somebody else could look at you and be like, you're not suffering.
yep,
Like, that's not hard.
yep.
Well, like, what are you complaining about? It's really not that big a deal.
Hmm.
And so it's very, very subjective.
Yep,
And so the idea of suffering is really what I think is causing me pain and heartache.
yep,
And it could be all kinds of different things. But I know from my own life, I've gone through hardships. And at the time, I did not think of it as suffering. And other
yep,
people went,
yep,
wow, you really suffered. And I thought, oh, I really didn't think of it that way.
yep.
So was it really suffering if I didn't really think of it as suffering?
Yeah,
I know for Emmett, right, going through all of his surgeries, at the time, that was normal for him. That's just what you do.
yeah,
And so I don't think in his mind, he was like, I'm suffering.
yeah. Exactly,
But somebody
exactly.
else could come along later and be like, wow, you suffered a lot, and
Yeah,
really change that for him.
yeah, yeah.
So it's really this perspective idea.
It is. It's certainly a perspective. Yeah, it's those points. The suffering, I always think about, the physical suffering. Somebody
Yes.
you're hurting. It's you can't get around. You can't, do your day-to-day things that you're suffering. But I think we lose the emotional side of that, the
Yeah.
mental side of suffering.
Yeah.
That we kind of, I think, it's passed over. Because suffering mentally and dealing with emotional strains, emotional hurts, can be, just as powerful, just as
Yeah.
strong, just as much hurt as as something physical.
Yeah.
And
I think personally, I would rather deal with the physical suffering.
yeah, I would agree. I
I
would
think the
agree.
emotional stuff, like the betrayals and the woundedness you get emotionally from people, that's harder.
It is. It is. It seems to cut deeper,
Yeah.
and it seems to hang on longer,
Yep.
than the physical stuff for sure. But yeah, I think the subjective part of it is right on key, because
Mm.
yeah, a lot of people have said, "Oh man, your family, you guys have gone through a lot. You've
Yeah.
suffered through all these things," and I'm like, "Yeah, it was hard, but I know there's other people that are probably suffering more
More.
than me.
Yeah.
I'm in a country that I have access to healthcare. I have access to clean things. I have
Yeah.
access to specialists and services and things that
Yeah.
other people around the world have never even heard of.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's like, well, I can't be suffering that much because I have access to all these things that can help,
Yeah.
make things better for my son, make things better for me. But then looking back, it's like I start thinking about the mental side of that,
Mm.
and sometimes not coming to terms with the idea that no, there was suffering, there was pain, there was hardship,
Yeah.
and having to deal with that later,
Later.
and start to recognize no, there was things there was loss, there was things I need to kind of work through emotionally, um,
And
in those
have that
moments.
conversation with God, right?
Yep.
Because we have expectations, even though we know God is not the magic genie in the bottle that makes everything right all the time,
No,
which
no.
would be terrible for us, but we kind of expect it, right?
A little bit, yeah, definitely
And
expect a
so
little bit,
when
yep,
there is suffering, and that's what Father Stu did, like when there
yep,
is suffering, there are going to be moments where you're like, God, why
yep,
is this happening?
yep.
Why did I have to go through this? And you kind of have to process that and work it through. And sometimes it takes a long time.
It does, and yeah, certainly that clip in the movie where he's crying out after finding out he's got a degenerative disease,
Yeah.
um, just crying out to God, why me? Why do I have to do this?
Yeah.
I believe in you, I trust you. Why is this happening? Certainly, I've had moments like that
Yeah.
through the journey
Yeah.
about why not why is it happening to me, but why is this happening to my son? Why is this,
Yeah.
you know, he hasn't even really started life yet. Like it's beginning, and why is he going through all these things, and
Yeah.
why is he suffering through all the IVs, all the needle pokes, all that stuff?
Yeah.
Like, but again, from Emmett's perspective, that's just normal. It's not a suffering piece, right? And it's
Yeah.
how you, again, it's that subjective how you look at it, the perspective of seeing it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I can certainly relate to that. But yeah, handling suffering now, again, sometimes I would have said, oh, I'm not suffering at all. And I just kind of,
Yeah.
right? But now it's really taking a personal look at, okay, is it a physical thing? Is it a mental thing? Is there something that's
Yeah.
really burdening me? And if there is, need to talk to God, need to talk to the people around me,
Yeah.
and try to get a better perspective. And even just talking about some of that stuff just helps to bring it to light, allows for that healing, for sure, emotionally, and then just having that support from the people around me.
So you're talking about sometimes the hurt and the struggle, which is suffering.
Yep.
We get in denial that it's happening.
I think so. I know I can get into that denial that I don't think it's suffering, or
Interesting.
it's just,
Yeah.
this is just part of life. I just need to get on with it without really thinking about it's a difficult thing. I could use support, or I could use some help to get through it.
Yeah, acknowledge it and then don't do it alone.
Don't do it alone. And I think we tend to brush it off as it's not a suffering, and we'll just trudge through it.
Yeah.
And not try to find that support.
Well, I find it hard. I don't know about you, but when you meet people who are always woe is me, and everything that happens is, oh, I'm suffering.
Yep.
And in my head, I'm thinking, I don't want to be like that.
Yep.
And so I guess we go too far in the other direction.
Yeah, swing the other way.
Yeah.
That I don't want to be a burden, or I don't want to be that constantly, woe is a me person, that everything's this mass struggle.
Yeah.
Because
there's too much drama. Sometimes the drama is pretty high.
It is. But again, that's an opportunity for us to maybe, come alongside, help that person, help, talk it through, work through some of those issues to try to help them to be, no, I can get through this, and I can get past it, because suffering can certainly adjust our character. It really can test that depending on how we go through it. So sometimes you think, oh, my life is perfect, everything's great, this is it. But then when that suffering starts, or that trial, or whatever it is, does your character change?
Yeah.
Do you lose what you thought of who you were? Does that disappear? Do you lose that character? And I think that's part of that test of, are we going to be bitter or better?
Yeah.
And where does our character sit in that? Does our character sit in God and doing it God's way, or do we fall to what society says and turn to woe is me, everything's awful?
Yeah.
And where do we stand? And I think our character can certainly be tested in those moments, on where we are.
Letting the circumstances of your life dictate what kind of person you're going to be.
Exactly. Yeah.
Instead of the other way around, where this is who I am, and so I'm going to approach these difficult circumstances this way no matter what.
Yep, because this is who I am, who God says I am, right?
Yeah. And ironically, well, not ironically, but it's actually through the hardships that our character grows.
Yes.
Right? What the scripture talks about, that we actually begin to change and we get stronger, so that when you face more hardships, I actually can stay true to who I am and who God's called me to be.
Exactly. All right. I think we've got time for another one here. Share about a time when you experienced pain and suffering. How was your faith impacted during that time?
Wow, that's a good question. I think I've had moments like that through my life, where things got really bad relationally, typically, more than physically. I think the physical I tended to shrug off a little bit more.
Yep.
And just assume, kind of like Emmett, like that's just what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
But more of the relational stuff. And I think for me, it kind of sidelines me a little bit, and I withdraw from God and I withdraw from people. And so in terms of being engaged and thinking about others and my character, that took a hit. When I hit those moments, it takes a hit. And I think we all do, like we withdraw and we get a little protective of ourselves.
Yeah, the walls go up kind of thing.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I think in those moments, that's more of what I did. That's why I appreciate it for you guys. When you hit that moment, you're like, intentionally, we got to turn out.
Yeah. It was a turning point of where we sit. And I think things would have been very different for us in those moments when things got really hard.
Yeah.
If we didn't have a firm foundation with God, I think would have changed a lot of how we approached the situation. Coming through all the Emmett stuff, and really turning to God and just focusing on what His plan was. I'm not going to say it was easy to continue to stay focused on that plan and know that God's got the direction. There's moments where it was very difficult to continue on, like, there's got to be a point where this is going to change. Like, I don't know how long we can keep going.
Yeah.
It's just one after another, and having that turning point of we need to look to the people around us, life groups, church family, people are, that support us, and how do we continue to push on, and having words of encouragement to continue to keep going, encouraging, you're doing good, Emmett's doing well, you're doing a great job, just keep going.
Persevere.
Persevere through the difficulties. But without that support or encouragement, it would have been a very different direction. It would have been much easier to give up on. Certainly much easier to turn away from God, because again, we wouldn't have had all the people surrounding us and continuing to reinforce for us, God is in this. There is the plan. There is part of it. Certainly made the direction very different.
Well, and I love that you're talking about, this is what Craig talks about, training versus trying. And training means it's not going to be perfect all the time. It's going to get messy. I'm going to question it. I'm going to struggle with it. But did you keep moving forward? Did you keep trying to reach out? Did you keep leaning on God and struggling through it? And you did. And now you're on the other side of so much of that.
Yeah, so much of that. Yeah, we're almost twice past it now,
Right.
Which seems like it was just yesterday this was all going on, but we've almost gone halfway past exactly what he's gone through in his life so far in years.
Yeah.
And we've almost been on the other side of the same amount of years as we were on the front end. So yeah, it's amazing to see where everything went by continuing to follow what God had called us to do, and be on that journey to see where we are now, and the bonds, the relationships we have with the people around us, and just all those areas have just gotten better because of that. And so now small things for us just seem like, oh, that's not a big deal.
It's not a big deal.
But again, it's that building of that perseverance. Now those little things are just like, oh, it's whatever. It's not a big deal. That's an easy one to get over.
We can do that one.
We can get over that, no problem. So yeah, it's been a journey.
Yeah,
it's been a journey, but it's the journey that God's called us to do, and that's where we're at. So.
Yeah, and it's good because it actually has grown you. It has grown our church. It's grown the relationships. It's grown Emmett. There's good that comes out of it, even though it's not good at the time.
Yeah, yeah. It's definitely wasn't good at the time, but now seeing back, it's made impacts on everybody around us, everybody that we came in contact with. It's impacted them in some way, and it's amazing to see and being able to have God conversations with those people around us, in those moments of why are we different? What are you doing different? How are you getting through this? Well, this is why. It's the people around us. It's they're here supporting us. God's got us on a journey. This is the difference, right? All right, so we got one question for you guys out there. Something that you guys can discuss with people around you, people that you maybe have a life group with. Or maybe they're really close friends that you really have a strong bond with. If you're currently struggling or suffering in an area in your life at this moment, talk about it with those people. Where are you needing to persevere, and how will you keep going? So something for you guys to take away, and please discuss that this week with the people around you, and let them know if there's that area, something that you are struggling with. Or maybe you can ask somebody, maybe something they are struggling with, and you could be that support for them.
Well, and I would add that if you feel like you're alone, if you feel like you don't have people like that in your life, then please reach out to us.
Yes.
Because we would love to be able to come alongside you and just support you and encourage you and help you to persevere through that suffering that you're experiencing. Because it is subjective, and sometimes it's pretty bad. It can get bad in what we have to face. And you don't need to do that alone. There's a God who loves you. And then there are people who would love to come alongside and support you.
Exactly. And that's exactly it. We are here to support you in any way that we can.
Yeah.
That's what we do. So we, of course, want to thank you guys. We've come to the end here. So thank you for joining us for another Talk It Over this week. We want to thank the tech team, of course, behind us, making this all available to you. And we just want to say thank you. So we want to remember, whoever finds God finds life.